All right, it is time to skol with the enemy, baby. All right, welcome back to another episode of Onebar and Lupagus Show. It is time to skol with the enemy. We got a special guest, Anthony Rivardo from the Fireside Giants, Empire Sports Media. All the links will be down in the description. They are almost at 14,000 subs. Be sure to get your asses over there, give them a sub. So we're going to talk Vikings, Giants, get to know these pesky Giants. Anthony, appreciate you hopping on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk some football. Big matchup this week, and the Giants have a chance of clinching a playoff spot. So
nice.
Really excited. The underdogs going into this one. Vikings are a good team, but I'm excited to discuss.
Boom.
Hell yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Well, we got a lot of questions for you, but just to start this thing out, Giants 8-5-1. I mean, looking at your Giants roster, I'm a little confused. So I'm hoping you can help me out a little bit. I mean, you got some upcoming free agents. I mean, I can't figure out what type of team the Giants actually are. Are you an up-and-coming squad? Are you all in this year? Are you going to be rebuilding? Help me out. What type of team is this?
Yeah, so I think the plan going into the year was that the Giants were a rebuilding squad, but they found some success early on and just kind of ran with it. I think that going into this offseason, there is going to be a lot of overturn. I don't think that this is the roster that the coaching staff necessarily wants, but they're making do with what they have. I think there's been a lot of opportunities this season for the Giants to make some splashes in terms of plays offensively, but they've chosen not to because I do feel like they're very limited in their personnel, whether that be a lot of fans think that Mike Kafka doesn't fully trust Daniel Jones in his arm, or whether that be Brian Dable doesn't trust the receiving core to actually go out there and get the job done. But a lot of contract years here, Daniel Jones in a contract year, Saquon Barkley in a contract year. So it's going to be interesting to see what big decisions the Giants make. But right now, the way the Giants fans look at it is that all of those guys, Saquon, Daniel Jones, they're playing for their jobs, and they're doing enough to probably earn at least another year here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this offseason.
Nice.
So I think it's safe to say that the 8-5-1 record is a little bit of a surprise for the Giants this year. What's the number one main reason for their success in 2022?
Yeah, if I had to pinpoint one main reason, it's Brian Dable. I think he has stepped in here, completely changed the culture, and just made a massive impact. I think that when you look at game management decisions under Joe Judge, under Pat Shurmur, and under Ben McAdoo, thinking back to 2016-17, Brian Dable is just far exceeding the quality of all of those previous head coaches. And another big factor has been Joe Shane finding some low-key guys throughout the offseason. And even during the regular season, Fabian Moreau is a guy we picked up right ahead of week one, and he's starting now for us at cornerback with Adoree Jackson out. And he's been capable. He's been quality enough to go out there and make some plays. So I think those are the key things, just the new management, the new coaching staff that was brought in. Wink Martindale has done a lot of great stuff with the defense, and even defensive line coach Andre Patterson, who you guys should be familiar with, formerly with the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's done an excellent job getting the most out of these guys. Dexter Lawrence having a career year. He's been incredible. I think he should be an all-pro this season. And, of course, Kayvon Thibodeau really starting to emerge during the second half of the season.
You bring up your rookie head coach, Brian Dable. I mean, he was a guy that Vikings fans, I mean, I was all about this guy. I wanted the Vikings to bring him in. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Kevin O'Connell now, but Dable, I mean, how do you rate him so far? I mean, you got to be happy with him, but I mean, are Giants fans just ecstatic about the future of this guy?
Yeah, we really are. And going into the year, I'll be honest, I had the Giants winning 4, maybe 5 games max. I thought that they would look better, but probably not finish out those games. It would just be a rebuilding stepping stone year. So the fact that we're even competing for a playoff spot at this point in the season is a real surprise. It's a breath of fresh air after, 6 years of being just a terrible football team. But Brian Dable, I mean, if I had to give him a grade, as you mentioned, I'd probably say like an A-. I think that there are some areas of improvement here. He's not perfect, but he's a rookie. So when you factor that in, he's been just as close to perfect as he really could be in his first year as a head coach of the New York Giants.
I give Lupagus' body about a D-, just so you know. But follow up quick. I know Lupagus, you got one for him. But follow up, Mike Kafka, you mentioned him, former Viking, all-time great. I believe he's on the practice squad here very shortly. But
I don't remember that.
Oh, hell yeah, he was. Do you think he's going to be a future head coach?
So I think that maybe one day down the line he could be, but right now I wouldn't be confident if I were another team who's going out there looking for a head coach. I know that that's a really common trend in the NFL right now. Find the young offensive coordinator that's had a lot of early success, right? Mike Kafka has had success, but I wouldn't say he's had enough success for me to feel strongly about him as a head coaching candidate, because there have been times this season where Giants fans have really questioned what was going through his head. There's been some clock management issues that seem to stem from poor play calling, and then really some areas where you see Kansas City, they go out there, and of course he was quarterback's coach with Kansas City last year. Kansas City will go out there, make a cute play, and it works like 9 times out of 10. For Kafka, he gets a little too cute, and it probably works like 4 times out of 10 is how I would guesstimate it. So he has those rookie hiccups as an offensive coordinator. So I don't think that he's ready to take that jump to head coach just yet, but give it another year or two. If he continues to have success with this New York Giants roster, especially considering how depleted they are in terms of talent, he could be a candidate in a couple years. But right now I would temper expectations.
So he's coming back to our practice squad. That's what you're saying.
We need him, man. We need him.
All right, Anthony, I got to ask you about your quarterback, Danny Dimes. I think he's kind of having a sneaky decent year. He's got 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 90.5 quarterback rating, 583 yards on the ground. What's your take on Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I'd say a sneaky good year is definitely an accurate assessment. But for Daniel Jones, there's a lot of Giants fans who feel like he's proven himself as a franchise quarterback. I don't think I'm in that boat. I think that he's a capable quarterback, but it's not when you look at the big time quarterbacks in the NFL, like the higher end ones, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, those guys are game changers. But then you look at the other tier of quarterbacks, no offense, but kind of like a Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo going maybe a tier below Kirk Cousins. I actually rate Kirk Cousins a little higher than a lot of other Vikings, non-Vikings fans. I like Kirk Cousins, but that Jimmy Garoppolo boat where they're a solid quarterback, you can win games with, make it to the playoffs, and even make it to a Super Bowl, but they don't make the difference. They don't carry the team. They're not the X factor that wins you a game. That's where I see Daniel Jones. I think he's limited. I think he's a good quarterback. He's got really great qualities. He's a great runner. He's a good decision maker now. He used to not be, but Brian Daboll seemed to have done an excellent job of getting him to cut down the turnovers. But I just think he's limited in terms of what he can bring to the table. I don't ever see him throwing for 35 touchdown passes with 10 interceptions and almost 5,000 yards. I don't think that's even possible for him. So going into this offseason, it'll be interesting because he's definitely earned at least another year with the team, whether that be a short-term extension or a franchise tag. But long-term, I do think that the Giants need to start weighing their options here and deciding whether or not they want to swing for the fences like the Bills did, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll did in 2017, 18 with Josh Allen, and try and find that next X factor at the quarterback position. But right now, I like Daniel Jones. I do think he's had a really good season, but he's limited overall.
Do you want him back next year? Let's say they're going to pay him maybe a little bit more than they should, but nothing crazy. Would you want him back?
Yeah, we've had that discussion on Fireside Giants a few times. What should they do with him? Franchise tag is a really steep amount, but it's also flexible. You can always rescind the tag. You can always trade him on the tag, and it's only 1 year. And the Giants have a lot of cap space next year, so I'm open to the franchise tag. Absolutely. I think that gives him another prove it year, really just one more year to prove that this season isn't a fluke and maybe he can put up some better stats and be more of an X factor next year. That's possible. And then the other possibility that we've discussed is maybe a 2-year contract, an extension where you give him 2 to 4 years, but very low wages, an out after the second year if you want to extend it to 3 or 4 years, but just a short-term deal at around 20 to 25 million is his market value right now. I'm open to that. But again, that sounds to me like you're going with the Jimmy Garoppolo route. And then you have to build a really solid roster around him rather than finding that X factor quarterback who gets you into the playoffs. So it's a give and take there. But I think that where I'm leaning is I'd throw the franchise tag on him, see how he plays one more year under Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka.
All right. Once again, we are joined by Anthony Rivardo, Fireside Giants. Links will be down in the description. Give them a sub. So I'm going to put your GM hat on, put your Brian Daboll hat on, whatever you want to do. If you can make one move on this Giants roster right now, whether it's benching somebody, taking someone from the bench, putting them in the starter, what are you doing?
Ahead of this game or in the offseason?
Right now.
Right now, That's a tough one. I think that the Giants recently had a couple of running backs in for depth capabilities, and I think that's a good move that they're probably going to make here. They just waived a linebacker today, but if I had to make one move, it's got to be a move at cornerback. We're going into this crucial matchup with the Vikings. Of course, Justin Jefferson is on a tear. He's arguably the best receiver in football right now, something that the Giants are well aware of, and they've been talking about all week during press conferences. But Adoree Jackson being out of the lineup has been kind of killer for New York. When he was in the lineup, they had a pretty solid pass defense, and they were able to play that man coverage, blitz-heavy defense that Wink Martindale loves to run. But without him in the lineup, it's really hard to do that because they don't have a cornerback on the outside who can press those receivers at the line of scrimmage and give the pass rushers time to get home. So if there was any move that I wanted to make, it would be at that cornerback position. I don't know what the solution would be right now. There's really not a lot out there for the Giants to survey that option, but that is our position of weakness, and that does give me a lot of fear going into this game against Minnesota.
All right, you touched on us a little bit earlier. Saquon Barkley having a damn good season this year, kind of a bounce back for him. He is a free agent at the end of the season. You want him back? Do you think the Giants are going to bring him back? What's going to happen there with Saquon?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, the discourse in the NFL community around do running backs matter? Should you pay them? That's a big question that a lot of people have, and I've wrestled with that question quite a bit. And over the past 2 seasons with Saquon Barkley dealing with so many injuries, I've often argued against giving him an extension on the channel. But right now he's playing at that point where you probably have to pay him. He's been that dominant this season. Disappeared for a few weeks, was kind of hobbled, probably got a little tired after a couple 30-plus carry performances. But he is a player that I don't think the Giants would be winning games without, and he has had that much of an impact. So the question of do running backs matter? Well, I think in this case they absolutely do, and in many cases with Minnesota and Dalvin Cook, he's absolutely mattered. So the contract, in the $12 million range that a lot of people are projecting for Saquon, he's probably going to ask for more of that Christian McCaffrey, inching closer towards that $20 million. And that's where I might jump off the train. But if you're able to keep it from that 12 to 15 in that Ezekiel Elliott, Nick Chubb range, I'm probably open to it. And I think it's a move that they'll need to make.
All right, let's talk Vikings Giants. Come Saturday at noon. Where can the Vikings take advantage of these Giants team? How do the Giants lose this game, and how do the Vikings make them look just silly?
Well, there's a couple ways to do that with the Giants, as we saw against Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. The Giants looked silly, and a lot of that had to do with their interior offensive line. That's a real rough spot for the team, and the secondary. Xavier McKinney out with a broken hand that he suffered over the bye week. Was in some sort of ATV accident, so that's a huge loss to the defense. But, of course, cornerback, I think Adoree Jackson being out in recent weeks has been the biggest loss for the Giants. He has an outside chance of playing this week, but I'm not too confident that he actually does suit up against Minnesota. So I would say he's likely to return the following week. So if there's anywhere that the Vikings are going to take advantage of the Giants' defense, it's going to be cornerback, and it's going to be a big day for Justin Jefferson and the rest of those guys on the offense. But defensively for Minnesota, the interior of the Giants' offensive line has been a mess for years, and this season is no different. John Feliciano at center has really struggled. Mark Lewinsky at right guard has been really bad for the majority of the games this season. And Nick Gates has been starting there at left guard. He's traditionally a right tackle, then guard, then center. But left guard is a new position for him, and he's really struggled in it. So I like our tackles. Andrew Thomas, I think he should be an all-pro this year. Evan Neal, he's had his ups and downs as a rookie, but I still have confidence in him long-term. Right now, pretty much everyone on that O-line, minus Andrew Thomas, is struggling. And, of course, we know that the Vikings have some pretty capable pass rushers, so that's probably going to be an area that they're going to want to take advantage of.
All right. That sounds all very, very good to me. Let's talk about this Giants team. Are they a playoff team, and how far can they actually go in the playoffs if they do make it?
Yeah, I never like to say that a team is automatically getting bounced out in the first round because as a Giants fan, I've seen it, 2007-8, 2011-12, those 2 Super Bowls over the New England Patriots. We shouldn't have even been in the playoffs for either of those seasons. We were the underdogs. The Cinderella story happened twice for Eli Manning. So who's to say it can't happen one time for Daniel Jones, right? I'll always hold out hope for that. Are they a playoff team? In most seasons, Probably not. But again, I think the coaching staff did such a great job of willing this team to victory week in and week out. So who's to say they don't go out there, get in their bag, and will us to another victory in the postseason? So yeah, I think it's possible. I think that they could go on a historic Cinderella story run. But in all likelihood, they're an 8-5-1 overachieving football team that probably gets bounced out in the first round.
All right, final. Once again, Anthony Rivardo, Fireside Giants. Hit up those links. Give them a sub. Not so much of a score prediction, but how do you see it shaking out on Sunday?
Yeah, the Giants are the underdogs, and if I have to be unbiased on this one, I don't see the Giants coming away with a win here, probably putting a damper on my Christmas Eve. But I think that they'll put up a fair fight. I think this is one of those games where, the Vikings came away with an insane win last week over Indianapolis, but they've had their struggles and they've played down the competition in a lot of their games this season. I think that the Giants have played up to their competition a few times, not against the Eagles a couple weeks ago, but a few other games this season, they've played up to their competition. I think this will be another one of those games that the Giants keep competitive, and that's what I'm hoping for at the end of the day, is we try and get these guys to gain some confidence going into the postseason. So if I had to put a score prediction, I think the Giants lose by less than one possession. I think it'll be a one-possession game in the end.
Oh, it's going to the wire. It's the Vikings.
There's no doubt that this will be a nail biter on Christmas Eve, which will suck ass. So we'll see what happens. Anthony, appreciate you hopping on, man. This is fantastic. Good luck on Sunday. And remember, hit up those links down in the description. Give them a sub. Let's get them 14,000 subs, baby.
Hell yeah.
Yep. Thanks, guys, and happy holidays.
Yeah, you too. Thanks again.